All right, this is Honors Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus. We're doing 10.3 in Pre-Calc, which is ellipses. In example 5, we're asked to find the equation in standard form of an ellipse with center at 2, -1, vertex 2, 1/2, and minor axis length 2. So again, you don't have to graph this. You're not expressly asked to graph it, but it's really helpful if you can picture where these points are located relative to one another. So I'm just going to make a tiny little graph, not because I care too much about graphing like a lot of this, but because just being able to look at the graph is going to make it kind of helpful. So 2, -1 is my center, and 2, 1/2 is my vertex. Okay, so what that tells me right away is that my major axis is vertical. So when I look at this, I say, oh, okay, cool. So number one, major axis is vertical, right? Because that should go through the center and the vertices, right? So that's the first thing, which means that it goes in the y direction. The second thing I can see from that is I can figure out what the length of A is, right? A should be from -1 to +1/2, which means A is 3/2, right? It's 1.5 or 3/2 or 1.5, but I'm going to leave it as 3/2, okay? So that's the information I get just by looking at this, right? The other piece of information I know is that I know the minor axis has length 2. Well, that means that 2 b's, right, come out to be 2, right? Because the minor axis is a b in one direction from the center and a b in the other direction, so b must be 1. So it seems to me that between knowing the center, which direction the ellipse is going, and the a and the b, I know everything I need to know. I didn't bother to do most of the graph. I just needed to visualize what was happening. So since my major axis is in the y direction, I should have y minus the y coordinate of the center, quantity squared, over a squared, which we'll talk about in a sec, plus x minus the 2, quantity squared, over b squared, right, equals 1. Well, I know a and b, so really all I need to do is I'm going to write it as y plus 1 because I think it looks nicer. Now, technically, this is over a 9/4. We're going to talk about why that's a little awkward in a sec, plus x minus 2 quantity squared over a 1. If you want to change this 9/4, equals a 1. If you want to change this because this feels a little awkward, I'd absolutely recommend it. It's fine. If you want to make this look a little prettier, you could put the 4 on the top, right? So 4, y plus 1 quantity squared all over 9, plus an x minus 2 quantity squared over 1 equals a 1. This is also fine, but I'm actually going to point out that this version, while not quite as pretty, is definitely more useful, right? Because this version is going to give me the information that tells me how long my major axis is. So anyway, for what it's worth, this is slightly more useful. So either of these answers would be fine, but I think that the slightly uglier version in this case is actually more useful.